Now it's time for today's perspective. And dear family, I hope to have a family to come back to. I remain strong for you until this nightmare ends. Now, those are the words spoken by the Israeli hostage Carmel Gat in a propaganda video released by Hamas last month after she was killed in a tunnel in Rafah by Hamas, along with 5 other hostages. Carmel Gat, who was an occupational therapist, was abducted from her parents' home in a kibbutz on the 7th of October last year. Her mother was killed in that attack. Her brother managed to escape with his daughter, while his sister-in-law, Yarden, was also captured, but was then released after 54 days in captivity. Joining us now on the programme is Gil Dickmann, who's Carmel's cousin, who has, of course, spent the last year working to try to secure the release of Carmel and the other hostages. Thanks very much for joining us on the programme today. First of all, just tell us what the past year has been like, not just for you, but for your whole family.
It's been an ongoing nightmare. Our worst fears came true on October 7th. That's something that we couldn't even imagine. This kind of massacre that started with rockets and then with terrorists coming into the kibbutzim and attacking the party, attacking soldiers and kidnapping people. I remember seeing a video of my aunt who was murdered that day. I saw it on Telegram. That's how I found out. I found out that she was kidnapped, and that's how I found out that she was murdered. And that was only the first day. But the year that has passed since October 7th was even worse than that, because we had all the signs and we knew everything on day one, on October 7th. We knew exactly what was going on, but we haven't managed to save the hostages who were kidnapped alive, and some of them were killed in captivity, just like my cousin Carmel Gat. We tried everything we could. We tried to warn that if we don't get the hostages now, if we don't sign a deal that'll get the hostages as quickly as possible and put the lives of the hostages on the top priority, we might lose them. And that's exactly what happened. And having commemorating a 1-year anniversary to this massacre is so hurtful, because there are still 101 hostages in captivity. That's a major failure. That's how I see it.
As I said at the top there, you spent 11 months trying to get Carmel particularly out, and in the end it wasn't to be. Did that change your mentality over this, or did it, if anything, spur you on even further to continue to fight?
Well, the first 11 months were full of hope, even though we knew that in several steps, Prime Minister Netanyahu was the one who didn't want a deal, and that even delayed it himself. We kept on hoping, because we knew that Carmel was alive, and we knew that she was still hopeful in captivity. We didn't know exactly what conditions she was held in, but we knew that we had to stay hopeful, because she was still alive and she was counting on us. And after losing Carmel, after failing to get her back, I can't be hopeful for her anymore. That's it. But for the other hostages, we have to keep on fighting. And in a way, it is more urgent than it was before, because right now we have the final proof that if we don't get the hostages back, if we don't sign a deal right now, the fate of the other hostages is going to be exactly the same like Carmel. They're going to be killed in captivity. That's now a fact. And that's why we have to act now. And that's why me, my family, my sister Shai, and Carmel's brothers Alon and all, we're not leaving this struggle. This struggle does not leave us. We are a part of the struggle until all the hostages come back.
Do you think that Benjamin Netanyahu and his government have done anything to try to bring the hostages back?
I think they tried some things. I think they even signed a partial deal that brought some of the hostages back. Carmel, my cousin, was supposed to come back on the 8th day of the ceasefire, but the ceasefire collapsed on that very 8th day, and she stayed behind. But more than 100 hostages were brought back that way. But that's exactly why I think they know exactly what to do right now. They know that the only way to get hostages back is by signing a deal, because they've already signed a deal. They know that's the solution. but they have chosen, unfortunately, to keep the war going and to keep fighting for eternity. And the only people who want the war to go on like this are politicians. People, innocent people from both sides of the border, don't want the war to go on. We want to come back to our lives. We want the hostages to go back home. We want the people of Gaza to go back to their homes as well. What we want is for life to come back to this whole region. And the only way to do this is by signing a deal. Most of the Israelis understand that 75% want to sign a deal to end this war and to get the hostages back. They agree.
What about
But
that
the
25%
government
though?
doesn't do that.
What about that 25% though? Because there are some in Israel who are very supportive of Benjamin Netanyahu, who say that now is the moment to try and seize the initiative to put an end, if you like, to the threat from Hamas and from Hezbollah once and for all.
Yeah, they're talking about a complete victory. And the way I see it, when you're fighting against a terror organization that's with a fundamentalistic mentality and the fundamentalistic ideas, you can't have a complete victory because you can't win against an idea. You can't defeat an idea in a war. You will just keep on creating more and more terrorists, both in the north and in the south, if you keep on killing people. And the only way to finish a war against a terror organization is with an agreement, with a deal that will bring better solutions for the whole region. That's what we believe.
There's a lot of attention, of course, on the hostages today, particularly 1 year on. Do you fear that as soon as that is over, it will be forgotten and Israel will just be back on its target of how to deal with Iran?
We are always, that's our fear all the time, that they're going to forget about the hostages. I think about the hostages that are still there, and they're probably thinking, they've forgotten about us. We're forgotten in Gaza. And that makes a lot of sense because it's been a year and they're not back yet. But we, as the families of the hostages, we're not going to give up. We're going to keep on fighting and to keep on reminding the government of Israel and all the governments of the world that the hostages are still there. The way I see it, what's going on in Gaza and the fact that the hostages are still held by this terror organization, by Hamas, is a crime against humanity being committed against these hostages. And because it's a crime against humanity, that means that every government of the world is a partner in this crime if they don't show up and try to put a solution for this on the table. And it's the obligation of the U.S. government and the French government and the Britain government and of course the Israeli government as well. But we're not going to give up. We are going to keep on reminding all the people all over the world that the hostages are still there and that we can put an end to this tragedy if we only sign a deal that will get the hostages back.
And is it really something that, if a deal is signed, you think that Hamas can stick to?
You know, it's very hard for me to trust anyone, let alone Hamas, a terror organization who murdered both my aunt and my cousin in captivity. It's very hard for me to trust them, but the only way to go forward, the way I see it, is to sign a deal and to go at it and to save the lives of the people that we can save. I believe that in the larger sense, the way to make sure that 2.5 million Palestinians aren't suffering under the regime, a terroristic regime like the Hamas regime, is by finding another solution for Gaza and another solution for Lebanon. And that's very important. But the first and most important thing to do is to save the lives that can be saved. And the lives that are now at immediate risk are the lives of the hostages that are still alive. Most of the 101 hostages are still alive, and we need to save them. The other hostages must be brought back to be buried here in Israel. But the most important and the most urgent thing is to save the lives of the hostages. That's what we believe here in Israel. That's what the people, I think most of the people of the region, the innocent people in the region believe, is that life should win this battle against death. I don't see it as an Israeli-Palestinian conflict or a Jewish-Muslim conflict. It's a conflict between the people who believe in life and that we have to save lives first and foremost, and the people who sanctify death and who believe that we can sacrifice people for other purposes. And I believe that the side of life must win. And the way to do this is to start by signing a deal.
Gil Dickmann, great to talk to you on the programme today. Thank you very much for joining us. Gil Dickmann there, the cousin of Carmel Gat, who was found, her body was found just a month ago, of course, in those tunnels of Hamas around Rafah. Thanks very much once again.